In 1901, sponge divers of the Greek island of Antikythera pulled up a corded lump of bronze from a shipwreck. For 2 years it sat in storage. When someone finally looked closely, they found gears inside. Precision gears, from a device built around 100 BC. The discovery didn't make sense. According to everything historians knew about ancient technology, machines like this shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years, but there it was, impossible and real. We like to think of history as a straight line. Knowledge accumulates, we build on what came before. But sometimes we forget, not because time passes, but because systems collapse. Trade route close, and the conditions that made knowledge possible simply vanished. This is a story about 3 things humanity made, then lost, and is only now learning to make again. The Antikythera mechanism was more than just a collection of gears. It was an astronomical computer that tracked the movements of the sun and moon, predicted eclipses, and even calculated the dates of the Olympic Games. At least 37 bronze gears worked together in a device small enough to fit in a wooden case. It used differential gearing and epicyclic systems that wouldn't appear in European machinery again until the 14th century. When researchers first examined it in 1902, most dismissed it as too complex to be genuine. The word they used was prochronistic, out of its proper time. How could people in the ancient world, working with hand tools and bronze, create something this sophisticated? It took decades of study to understand what they were looking at. In the 1970s, a science historian named Derek de Sola Price confirmed it was an analog computer. In 2000s, high-resolution CT scans revealed inscriptions and gear trains that showed the full scope of what it could do. One researcher called it almost unbelievable in its brilliance. But here's what makes this story unsettling. This was the prototype. The craftsmanship suggested it came from a workshop that knew exactly what it was doing, which means there were probably others like it. They simply didn't survive. Bronze was valuable. When these devices stopped working, they were melted down and reused. The knowledge itself vanished when the Hellenistic world scientific centers shifted. The Roman Empire had different engineering priorities. The Greek texts were lost or never copied. By the Middle Ages, no one remembered how to build something like this. The technology didn't evolve, it just stopped. A millennium passed before humans made machines of comparable complexity again. Around the same time that Greek engineers were building astronomical computers, Roman engineers were perfecting something that seemed far more ordinary, concrete. But Roman concrete wasn't ordinary at all. The Pantheon in Rome has stood for nearly 2,000 years. Its dome is still the largest reinforced concrete dome in the world. Walk along the Mediterranean coast and you'll find Roman harbor structures, piers, and breakwaters that even endured 2 millennia of waves and salt water. Modern concrete doesn't do this. Modern concrete crumbles. The Romans called their concrete opus cementitium. They mixed lime with water and volcanic ash, specifically from Pozzuoli Bay of Naples. The volcanic component was the key. It allowed the concrete to sit underwater and give it a strange property. Over time, it actually got stronger. When seawater seeped into it, Roman marine concretes, it triggered chemical reactions that formed new crystals. These crystals filled micro cracks and reinforced the material. It was a form of self-healing. The Romans didn't understand the chemistry. They couldn't have. But they understood empirically what worked. They knew to mix 1 part lime to 3 part volcanic ash for buildings, and richer mixes for underwater work. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century, noted that this concrete was impregnable to the waves and every day stronger. For centuries, people thought this was an exaggeration. Then modern geologists analyzed the structures at the molecular level and found he was describing real chemistry. But the recipe didn't survive the fall of Rome. In the chaos of the 5th and 6th centuries, trade networks collapsed. The supply chains that brought volcanic ash from Italy broke down. Large-scale public works stopped. The skilled labor force dispersed. Medieval builders returned to cut stone in simple mortar. They had access to Vitruvius' architectural writings, which described concrete, but having the text wasn't enough. The practical knowledge, the feel of the mix, the understanding of when and how to use it, that was gone. For roughly 1,000 years, concrete technology was dormant. It wasn't rediscovered until the 18th century, when engineers began experimenting with hydraulic cements again. Even then, it took until the 21st century for scientists to fully understand why the Roman version was so durable. In 2023, MIT researchers discovered that tiny lumps of lime in Roman concrete, previously thought to be flaws, were actually deliberate. They came from hot mixing quicklime with ash, and they gave the concrete self-healing properties. And researchers created samples using the ancient method and deliberately cracked them themselves within weeks. Third story moves forward in time, but follows the same pattern. In Bengal, particularly around Dhaka, weavers created a cotton fabric so fine it seemed impossible. They called it muslin. The West called it woven air, or evening dew. A 20-yard muslin sari could be compressed into a matchbox. The fabric was so translucent that Mughal women wearing it were sometimes reprimanded for appearing unclothed. It wasn't an exaggeration. Historical accounts describe cloth you could barely feel in your hands. The technical specification explain why. Dhaka muslin had a thread count between 800 and 1200. Most modern cotton fabrics have thread counts around 50 or 100. Even today, 1,000 count fabric is considered extraordinary. Bengali weavers achieved this by hand 2 centuries ago. It required a specific cotton plant called Futi karpas, native to the region near the Meghna River. The fibers were exceptionally fine. Young women would spin the cotton into yarn almost as thin as a filament. They had to work in high humidity, early morning, or during the rainy season to keep the delicate thread from breaking. Then weavers would spend months on a single piece, following a process with 16 distinct steps. The fabric became a luxury commodity. The Mughal courts prized it. It was exported to Persia, the Ottoman Empire, and Europe. Marie Antoinette wore muslin. Jane Austen wrote about it. For Bengal, it wasn't just a trade good, it was cultural heritage, an art form, and the backbone of the regional economy. Then it disappeared, not gradually, within a few decades. In the early 19th century, the knowledge was gone. The cause was colonial economics. After the British East India Company took control of Bengal in 1757, they systematically dismantled the muslin industry. They flooded the market with cheaper machine-made textiles from English mills. They imposed duties that made handmade fabrics uncompetitive. They coerced weavers to accept lower prices. By the 1830s or 1840s, true Dhaka muslin was extinct. Expert weavers had fallen into poverty or changed professions. Many died in famines worsened by colonial exploitation. The specialized knowledge that had been passed down through generations simply stopped being passed down. There was no economic reason to continue. The Futi karpas cotton plant disappeared too. Rivers changed course. Colonial agricultural policies encouraged different crops. Without the right fiber, even if someone remembered the techniques, they couldn't reproduce the fabric. Museum pieces remained, silent evidence of what had been possible, but no one knew how to make it anymore. What's remarkable is all 3 of these lost technologies are being rediscovered now. The Antikythera mechanism had been virtually reconstructed Using CT scans and computer modeling, researchers can now see how every gear meshed, how the system encoded astronomical cycles, how ancient engineers compressed centuries of observation into a portable device. The knowledge isn't lost anymore. It's documented, studied, understood. Roman concrete is being reverse engineered. Scientists have identified the specific minerals that made it durable. They have recreated the hot mixing process with quicklime. They've built prototypes, structures that shows the same self-healing properties as ancient buildings. There's serious discussion about using Roman-inspired concrete for modern infrastructure, not for nostalgia, but because it lasts longer and produces less carbon than modern cement. Bengali muslins, perhaps the most improbable revival. They required finding preserved botanical samples of Futsi, carpus, in the archives of Royal Botanic Gardens in London, extracting DNA, identifying a living plant in remote Bangladesh that matched the extinct variety. Then cultivating it required training artisans to relearn techniques from historical descriptions and trial and error. One weaver described rubbing garlic on her ends at night to keep them soft, enough to handle threads as thin as the hair. By 2020, they succeeded. Several muslin saris were woven, some selling for thousands of dollars. In 2021, Bangladesh formally announced they had brought back muslin, presenting a piece to the Prime Minister. The project continues. The knowledge is being rebuilt, one careful thread at a time. So, what pattern emerges from these stories? Knowledge doesn't survive automatically. It requires more than just documentation, or even physical examples. It requires the systems that make the knowledge useful. It requires the materials, the skills, the economic conditions that allows people to practice their crafts. When those systems collapse, whether through political upheaval, economic disruption, or simple neglect, the knowledge goes with them. But the reverse is also true. When we're motivated, when we have the tools and the curiosity and the will, we can recover what was lost. Not easily, not always completely, but we can look at a corded lump of bronze and decode a computer. We can analyze ancient concrete at the molecular level and understand its secrets. We can find a plant, grow it, and weave clothes that haven't existed for 200 years. The technologies themselves matter. They're useful. Roman concrete could help us build infrastructure that lasts. Bengali muslin represents artisanship we've lost in the age of industrial textile. But maybe what matters more is what the pattern reveals, that progress isn't inevitable, and that what we know now we could forget tomorrow if the conditions change, that the line between advancement and regression is thinner than we'd like to think, and that sometimes looking backward isn't nostalgia, it's recovery. It's remembering what we once knew, had to do, and asking whether we might want to know it again.